There's a man, homeless and hungry. There's a wind that's hard and biting. There's a song in need of singing. There's a fuse in need of lighting. And it's no secret, the day is coming. And it's a day I hope to see. But if they ask you, brother, who told you that, you didn't hear it from me.
Is to raise awareness about the connection between what happened in Guantánamo and also police torture in Chicago.
Okay.
And there are many different connections that I wasn't aware of until this exhibition was actually put together.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one of the police officers under Police Commander John Burge took a leave of absence, went to Guantánamo, and then taught people there how to use the torture techniques they were using in Chicago.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That connection.
It really is. It really is.
Wow.
And so this really tries to give people voice who are incarcerated and also document the history of what is happening in this country. So if we step into this room, John ran a program in Chicago called the Trap House.
Uh-huh.
And so young people would get together, and he is a restorative justice practitioner, trained in restorative justice and leading peace circles, and he would bring young people into his space and then ask them different questions. And that would be the foundation for the circle for that day. He would also use music, very talented young man, and so he came here and he put up these questions, and they put markers down so that people could actually respond to the questions that he had put up. And as you can see, it has become a very heated conversation.
Yeah, for example, what are some of the questions?
It started off, for example, saying, "Are Black people healed from being enslaved? If not, what is needed in order to heal?" And so these are some of the responses. Black people will never be healed from being enslaved. And you must be real and lasting change in the justice system of healing our people. No society still refuses to acknowledge everything they did. They continue to downplay the role of their ancestors. We don't heal from the pain we cause. We deserve nothing but guilt as white people. And so these are people from different races responding to these different questions. And some of them have really gotten heated. And it's been very interesting to me because someone came and then added the issue of abortion, which was not on the wall, but became something that people began to really debate about.
Where is that added?
And that's over here, where they're saying Planned Parenthood is committing Black genocide, and then someone says Planned Parenthood is not committing Black genocide.
Uh-huh.
And then we have some very, very interesting turned up responses.
Right.
My body, my choice, abortion saves lives. So people are really here debating this issue, even though it was not the original intent. It was what people felt when they came in, and so they're debating this back and forth.
It's a very compelling piece.
One that really stuck out to me is reasons women get abortions, and the response, none of your business.
Wow. And it's really a participatory, the wall is very compelling in its own right, but it becomes this participatory art piece, right?
It really does, and it's growing every day. Every time the museum is open, you see people in here adding comments to the wall, which has been very interesting. And also, what I found interesting is what young people, the 2, 3, 4-year-olds are doing. They're also participating.
Oh, I see.
So yes, so they're putting their marks on the wall too, so we know that they've been here too.
And here's one, if House Resolution 194 is step 1, what is step 2, step 3, and beyond?
Ban cars. And cars acknowledge that the entire United States still operates in the same systems created with slaves. And that comment was actually written by Latanya Suffolk. And Latanya is one of the John Burge torture survivors. So she was tortured by John Burge and incarcerated for almost 2 decades before she got released. She is now working at the Chicago Torture Justice Center.
And we want to talk about that in a bit. Yeah.
Yes, so it's really, to me, a very powerful way that people have experienced this exhibit and also given their reactions to what the exhibit is about.
And is this your piece?
Yes, so this is my great niece. This is my sister's great granddaughter. And when George Floyd was killed, they were out protesting outside their home. And we took photos of them during the protest. And I turned those photos into quilts. They were sitting on these banners that said, "I can't breathe." That is her.
How old is she in that?
She is 3 at the time.
Okay.
This is her big brother.
Okay.
He is 7 at the time,
Right.
also protesting. And I also have to say that in my family, the young people are very vocal about art. And so when she saw this piece, she's 3 years old, and of course, I didn't even know she knew her colors, but she was very clear to tell me that her favorite color was pink, not purple.
That's good.
I have to really respect what they tell me in my family.
Right. So they teach us all the time. Right?
They do, and for some of the other things that I've done, there was one piece that I did where I had one of my great nieces holding a sign that said, "We are not afraid." And the young people came over who were in their 20s and 30s, and they were like, "No, Auntie Dorothy, that is not what we would say." I said, "Well, what would you say?" They said, "We would say, we ain't scared." So I had to take it back off and redo the piece. And I think it's a lot more powerful with the "we ain't scared."
So you're a person, you're one of those teachers who keeps learning from the young. That's a pretty powerful thing, to have young people be your teachers and never break that connection.
Yeah, they're really wonderful. I taught for 26 years at the Urban Studies program.
Right.
I taught about human rights and social justice. We went to all different neighborhoods around the city. We met with people who were either making policy or being impacted by policy. And over the years, some of the things that I've learned has just really been incredible. They have changed my life, and I really value all of those experiences.
Right. You know, I told Roxana this story, but I was sitting with my 14-year-old granddaughter last week and another young woman, and my granddaughter and I were talking about Langston Hughes, and she'd been studying Langston Hughes, and we learned that Langston Hughes was descended from one of the black fighters at Harper's Ferry who died with John Brown. And I turned to this other young woman, I said, "You may not know this, but," and my 14-year-old interrupted me, he said, "Don't start a sentence like that. You may not know this. That's mansplaining." I'm like, damn,
that's right.
I was busted, but what I liked about her, she did it right there. You know, she didn't wait to tell me later what a jerk I was. She told me right there, and that's, you gotta be open to that.
And you have to be, because that's how we learn.
That's how we learn.
You know, it's an intergenerational conversation.
Paying attention,
Yes.
exactly.
And
How old are you now?
I'm now 67.
77,
Yeah,
10 years
so,
for senior.
and I just, I'm enjoying life.
Me too, and loving every minute. When did they start calling you Mama Dorothy?
They started calling me Mama Dorothy probably about 25 years ago.
Really? You were a kid?
Because my daughter went to Betty Shabazz.
Okay.
And at Betty Shabazz, which is an international charter school,
Right.
African Center, all of the mothers were Mama.
Right.
And then their first name is
Safisha,
Yes.
Safisha and Hadi.
Yes. And then all of the fathers were Baba. And
Baba,
then their last
Baba,
name.
yeah, exactly.
And so, hearing people call me Mama Dorothy, then some of my students started calling me Mama Dorothy.
That's funny.
And then it just kind of expanded.
That's great.
So-
I thought maybe it happened when you kind of graduated into senior status, but actually it's more just a natural kind of flow. I taught in daycare where my kids went to school, and all the students called me Bill, so my kids always called me Bill instead of Dad.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because they heard it from the other kids.
Mhm.
Okay, Mama Dorothy, great. And to talk about Betty Shabazz, what about this side?
This side is how he would have changed the reparations ordinance that was introduced, and how he would have changed the language to really deal with the fact that we need to be very conscious of how we do language. For example, whereas slavery in America resembled no other form, he says, whereas enslavement in America resembled no other form.
Mm.
Whereas Africans forced into slavery were brutalized, humiliated, and dehumanized. Whereas Africans forced into slavery were tortured and attacked in a savagely violent way, publicly mortified, and subjected to being stripped of their humanities, name, language, and traditions. So this is him rewriting this.
Who did this piece?
This is also my show.
Okay, it's fantastic. And when you say this about language, you're a person who's still learning language. I'm still learning language. These improvements are fantastic.
They are,
And they make it a different, they give it a different meaning.
and it makes it open to everybody who comes to read it.
Right?
That's something that I learned teaching urban studies.
Right.
I once had a session where we were talking about intersections between different groups. Young people from public housing. I grew up in public housing, so I was very impacted by what they said to me.
Mhm.
They said, you use different language when they were here. And that kind of stopped me from cross-coding. And I was like, okay, you're right. The language that I use from now on will be the language that I use all the time, whether people like it or not. So because of that, I have had academics ask me, did you even get a degree here? So, you know, if that's how you feel about it, I'm happy for you, but I'm very happy with who I am.
So you pointed out, the resolution says, whereas slavery in America, and he's changed it to whereas enslavement in America. And what that brings to my mind, I published a book with Hakeem Abduli a decade ago. And the draft that I gave him used the word slaves and slavery. And he very gently said to me in one of our editorial meetings, don't use the word slaves. That's too incumbent. Strangle somebody.
Exactly.
Talk about enslaved workers, and that's another example where you learn something and then you incorporate it from then on. But that's very clear and very useful.
And I think that this makes the reparations ordinance a lot more accessible to everybody who is fighting for reparations.
And it explains things much more clearly.
I think it does.
I mean, for example, you just read this piece, but forced into slavery were tortured and attacked in a savagely violent way. That's different than kind of the neutral sounding, kind of breathe in, but that's very clear.
Or even instead of saying a de facto system, economic or social factors rather than from laws.
Right.
So let's just tell the truth about what was happening in a clear way.
Right. This is a beautiful piece. Wonderful. Take us further.
Okay. one of the torture survivors. What really hurt is that no one really listened to what I had to say. And that went on for years, for decades. And, you know, it is the truth.
Yeah.
No one believed the torture survivors for decades.
You know, there's a wonderful, wonderful book called The Contract of Mutual Indifference, and it's about the Holocaust in Europe. And one of the consistent through lines through that book is that the Jewish folks who survived the Holocaust, their main problem wasn't just that they were being tortured and brutalized and murdered. It's that no one seemed to listen. They would be marched down this public street, and people would look and continue watering the flowers. You know, and that's what Anthony gets at with that very concise statement. Nobody listened.
And that's why I quilt, because quilt is something that was passed down from generations. And quilts is the way that we have documented our history. It's the way that we've told our story from our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is my goal. It's like my also goal is to inspire people to learn more about what these issues are and then move to action at some point.
So it's art, knowledge, education, activism. There's a rhythm there.
Yes, it is. And so it's really interesting because when I was growing up, I come from a long line of quilters. And so just even on my mother's side, my mother quilted, my grandmother quilted, my great-grandmother quilted. I knew my great-grandmother. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
She didn't pass away until I was 17 years old.
Wow, that's very fortunate.
And so when I would go to Mississippi in the summer, they would say, come in here, we'll show you how to quilt. I said, nope, it's for old people, not doing it. And now I'm quilting.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes.
And what part of Mississippi?
Meridian, Mississippi.
I know Meridian.
So yes, yeah.
Amazing. And you would go down there for summers?
Yes. My grandmother, great-grandmother, lots of uncles and aunts were there.
Right, right. They were, so your folks or your grandfolks were part of the Great Migration coming to Chicago.
I actually am the first person in my family born in Chicago.
The rest came from Mississippi.
Yeah, I have 3 brothers. I have 2 brothers. Well, I had 3 brothers. One passed away, and a sister who were born in Mississippi. And then the way it was told to me by my parents is that they were sharecroppers, and they were talking about moving to the north after my father got out of the service.
Mm-hmm.
And someone told the owner of the land, and he told them to get off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they moved to Chicago.
You probably knew Tim Black.
Yes.
Who died
Absolutely.
a year ago.
Yes, Tim Black would come in and speak to the
Yeah, and Tim, yeah, that's right. He was involved with the Associated Colleges. But Tim always told the story about he came here when he was 1 year old. And he told the story about looking around at Alabama and said, I'm not staying here. And the parents had no choice because he couldn't change his own diaper. that was Tim's way of saying how he got involved in the Great Migration.
Exactly. Yeah. And to come during the second wave, where they moved from Mississippi to the west side of Chicago, and then moved from the west side of Chicago to LeClaire Courts Public Housing and Cicero.
Mm-hmm.
Very racist, let's just keep it real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were surrounded and not welcomed at LeClaire Courts.
Right.
And then moved from there. When my mother and father got divorced, they moved her from LeClaire Courts because it was a low rise to a high rise because Chicago Housing Authority felt that women could not upkeep the property, like cut the grass, even though they were doing it anyway.
Exactly.
So
Levels and levels of discrimination.
exactly.
One on top of the other. Well, tell us more about this room, what you see.
Okay, this piece is done by an incredible artist by the name of Damon Locks.
Yeah, he's part of our network with the PNAP.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's a PNAP teacher, incredible, and so this is his artwork. Always incredible social messages in that artwork. Always his history being told, and so these are some of the pieces that he did for this particular exhibition.
You know, I learned about Damon that he has a rock band also.
Yes, incredible.
I know.
And dancers, incredible dancers. I mean, he is truly a multi-talented person.
An artist that crosses every genre, yeah.
And very humble.
Very, very quiet and gentle and lovely guy.
And I met him for the first time when I was doing a residency at the Hyde Park Art Center last year.
Yeah, I met him when he was going down with PNAP down to teach, and I teach with PNAP as well.
So this one is very interesting. So this is a quilt. Most people think that the quilt is from the back side. So I'm going to ask you to go under it and tell me what you think.
Wow. You went, here's a field of grass, here's flowers, and on the other side is a young person holding a sign that says, "Stop killing us." Is that one of your grandchildren?
That's just one of my I have no grandchildren, although I continue to ask them, but I don't have any yet. So this is another one of my grandnephews.
Oh, grandnephew. Okay.
And so sometimes when people are on the L platform, you know, they will give me a thumbs up or something like that, you know.
I was wondering why, I was going to ask you, why did you hang it backwards? It's not backwards.
No, it's so
The
that
front is
people-
facing the L station.
Exactly.
And we're looking out at the L station right here at Fulton. Fantastic. And
These-
big signs saying, "Stop killing us."
And this one I really love. These were done by people who are incarcerated, who are students of the PNAP program, to make banners about what would a banner look like for the 51st state. And so these are some of their ideas. Togetherness, always together. Our reach extends to every brother. Black reunion, all of us or none of us, brotherhood. So these are the messages that they're sending about what they think should happen if there's a 51st state banner. But the other thing that really moved me, although I don't know how to do it, is some of them created dance movements. And so we have the illustrations of what the movements should actually look like.
Let's see.
And they have the movements and, you know,
That's
it's wonderful. Yes.
And the prompt was, what would be the motto of the 51st state? That kind of
Yes.
thing?
Yes.
It reminds me of something that I've thought of for a long time, which is when we get into our community, the PNAP community or the reformed communities of various types, I always think we're citizens of a country that doesn't yet exist.
Right.
But we should be thinking about what that country would look like.
I agree.
And that's what these folks are doing. They're imagining
Yes.
what the message should be of brotherhood and sisterhood, you know, community, and that kind of thing.
And I really think that they've done an incredible job. It's just really wonderful. And as you can see, so much of it is about unity and togetherness and the power of unity.
Do you, in your way of thinking of these things, do you reach back to African or indigenous ideas all the time?
All the time.
Say.
So we'll talk more about this when I get downstairs, but I often use African symbols in the work that I do to send the message, especially Adinkra symbols from West Africa. And so in the quilts that you will see downstairs, which are quilts that are of torture survivors who were still incarcerated when I started the quilt. 2 of them have been released, and they all have hand-stitched symbols.
Who's been released?
Gerald Reed.
Right.
And so,
That's great.
and so Gerald Reed, I met his mom, Amanda Shackelford, years ago. She's been an activist forever.
Right.
Been advocating on his behalf forever. They did an exhibition called Freedom Dreams years ago. And one of the things they asked is for people in Stateville to send a written piece out that could be used as inspiration to give to someone to do the art. And so I got a written piece about Amanda Shackelford from her son Geraldine, which was incredible. And so I reached out to her and I said, do you have any photos of your son? And the only photos that she had of her son were Polaroids.
Taken in prison.
Before he went to
Oh,
prison.
before you went to prison, okay.
And so she gave me a Polaroid, and I could not even make out the faces. And so I had to create a quilt with no faces that symbolized them and their love.
Back to this for 1 minute. One of the things that strikes me about the morality of what they're projecting is, and the reason I asked about African influences, is it feels like the ethics of Ubuntu, the idea I am because we are.
That's right.
Not I am me and I'm the center of the
Exactly.
universe, but I am because you are.
Absolutely.
And that feels like
I agree.
that's the ethic right there.
Yes. Now this incredible artist, Sarah Jane Reed, she wonderful photographer.
Yeah, I saw her at the Women's March on Friday.
She is always there, present, documenting movements, and this is her documenting some of the social justice movements that dealt with policing in Chicago. And so you have Laquan McDonald, who was shot 16 times by the police officer and who had to be stopped from reloading his gun and then continuing to shoot Laquan after he had already been shot 16 times. When they called for this police officer, they asked him to bring a taser, and instead he jumped out of the car and just started shooting.
Now that's a story that we know now, but it took, 2 years in order for that to come out, because of course the police said he fired in self-defense, and of course WGN and ABC went right along with it. Right?
And they said that he lunged at him with a knife, which was not true. And I believe, and I could be the only one who believes this, but I believe that Laquan's tape being released had a huge impact on us getting reparations.
I think so too.
Because the day that the tape was going to be released is the day that Rahm Emanuel said that he supported the reparations.
Absolutely, and Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, had suppressed that tape in order to get reelected.
That's exactly right.
But see, and the same, incidentally, it's true of Adam Toledo, it's true of Fred Hampton, where I was there at that point, but they have a story that they spin, and the news media just picks it up and acts as if it's the truth.
Exactly.
After Fred was killed, WGN did a whole reenactment of what happened at the apartment, which was a total lie.
Exactly.
It was a complete
Yes.
fabrication. But that's what went out to the public.
100%, and it doesn't stop.
No, but this art shows you, it breaks through those lies in a phenomenal way. I think the Laquan light show is extraordinary.
Incredible. Rakia Boyd. What happened to Rakia Boyd?
Justice for Rakia.
Yeah, I remember her brother coming to the police board hearing. I took my students that time, and we were sitting there when he came forward and he said, I'd like to know what you're going to do to the person who killed my sister.
Right.
And he stood there and he started to cry.
Yes.
And as cold as ice, the police board members said, don't make us remove you. Your 2 minutes are up.
Was Lori Lightfoot on the board?
Yes, she was.
See?
Yes, absolutely.
I remember those
Yes,
days.
yes, absolutely.
I was there.
Do not make us remove you. And police got on both sides of him. The audience went crazy.
Yeah.
They finally backed down, but they never said what they were going to do to the person who shot Rakia Boyd.
You know, these pictures that Sarah took are incredible, but I like some of these slogans are incredible. Abolition is radical imagination.
Yes.
That's something people have to understand. It's not just do away with something. It takes an imagination to imagine what kind of society we would live in.
Exactly.
That didn't require caging. Or this one, Reparations Now, with 15 police officers standing behind it.
Actually, I was there. So what happened there is that was right before we were going to testify for reparations to the finance committee. And so this is before all of the activists showed up. And the activists did a die-in that particular day where they were all spread out on the floor. And I remember saying to a young person, yes, I'm gonna die with you guys, but you all are gonna have to help me up because I'm
That's so
old.
funny. I had the exact same experience because this one guy said to Burnaby, my partner, can I help you up? And she said, you can help me by not watching me try to get up.
Yes, I was like, no, help me up.
Yeah.
So,
Just turn away so I
Exactly.
can struggle my way up.
Exactly. Yes, but I did testify for reparations, and one of the things that was important to me was that reparations was a restorative justice approach. Apologize for what you did, and then figure out a way to make the community whole. And they still have not lived up to everything they promised in the reparations ordinance. And what I really have learned from is hearing from people who were torture survivors, their reaction to the reparations ordinance, and I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about how we could have changed it to make it more inclusive, how they wanted not only reparations for them, they wanted some acknowledgement of the pain and the hurt that happened in their family and that impact. And those are things we hadn't thought about. And I appreciate the fact that they are, educating us on what we should be doing now to expand this ordinance.
I think we should sit at the desk for a bit,
Okay.
talk about reparations, and then we can go downstairs. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Is that okay with